Welcome to the Burgundy and Gold Knuckleheads podcast. As always, getting through a full regular season with a win. My main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reggie?
What up? What up? What up?
We made it through the season, and it was a season that we didn't expect, right?
No,
It exceeded our expectations, and the season's, you know what, Reg? The season's still going on.
it's not over.
It's not over.
The season's not over.
Yeah. Washington walked away with a win today over the Cowboys, and that, along with certain teams winning and certain teams losing. You know, a couple of weeks ago, when we got in, we thought we were going to Philadelphia. Then all of a sudden, after last week, we thought we were going to LA. Lo and behold, we're not going to either place.
That's
We're
right.
we're going to Tampa.
Tampa.
We are going to face the team that we lost to week one. Jaden Daniels' first game, the coaching staff's first game, everybody's first game of the season. I'm looking forward to this game. We can talk about that in a minute, but what do you think, Reg?
No, you're right. And it's how it's funny how things has come full circle, because to your point, this was everybody's first crack at the new regime, new season, new team, new ownership, new front office. The very first game they played that counted for something was on the road week one in Tampa. It didn't go well for us, but we all chalked it up as Tampa's potentially playoff team. We got a rookie quarterback as our first. We didn't know what to expect, and we lost the game. And we didn't look great in the game, but we lost the game. And now here we are, 18 weeks later, right? The 19th week.
Yeah.
We're going back to Tampa, and we're going back to Tampa and get a second shot, another bite at the apple on this deal here. And clearly, we are a different team, and so are they. But we'll have plenty of time to discuss our game against the upcoming game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round. Oh man, anyway. But I wanted to get your quick reaction, your first initial reaction to today's game. Good, bad, just kind of if just give me your elevator pitch, if you will, of your reaction to today's game.
It's a lot of mix. It's happy, it's concern. It's happy for today. It's concern for the playoffs. And the happy is, I know we talked about it last week, but when the game was over, I looked to Matt at the bar, and I'm like, 12 wins. We got 12 wins. You know, how did this happen? Right? Nobody would have thought we made it to 12 wins. And you know, indirectly about Washington, you know, kind of we touch on the playoffs. You know, in the NFC, it took 11 wins or more to make it into the wild card. With the Vikings with 14 wins, and all they got is a wild card. It took a lot more this year. You know, normally a 10-win team gets you in the playoffs. It didn't this year, not in the NFC at least. There was a AFC. I think the Broncos were 10 wins and they got in. But back to the game real quick. This is, I think, 3 weeks in a row where the first half we are just struggling every which way, and the second half we get things rolling. There's things that you say, oh, we need to get this cleaned up for the playoffs. I don't know at this point of the season that you do a whole lot of cleaning up, or that you can do a whole lot of cleaning up.
Right.
But some of the things that are going on, I'll say the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, it does not sit well for going far in the playoffs. Not that you can't win, but at the same time, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. With all those things that they need to clean up, man, they still find a way to win. They still find a way to win. I mean, this is, how many games is this now going down to the wire? And we are consistently the ones winning. That says a lot, right? Yeah. That says a lot about the team overall. But man, in the season, if that comes to bite you once or twice, you still make it in the playoffs. In the playoffs, that bites you once and you're out.
Right.
You're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. But that's my quick thought on that. I've got more, but that's the quick part.
Okay. I'm a little surprised if I'm being honest that your take. I don't disagree with any of it. Where the surprise come in is because what you're saying is what I said weeks ago, and I watched that game, and I had the privilege of being at the game, so I was there live and I watched it, and I didn't find myself with a whole lot to celebrate. And I'm not going to be a negative Nancy here, but I'm also going to keep it real. I'm going to keep it 100, right? I said this weeks ago, and I was told it was an overreaction. Nothing has changed. In fact, we're barely winning these games that you're referring to. You watch what Philly did to the Giants last week, or Minnesota. You should watch what these teams that are heading to the playoffs did against, like what Tampa did against Carolina last week, and all the stuff that has happened with these teams, or the Rams, or whoever it was. They're killing the teams that are out of the playoffs.
Right.
Washington sitting here playing footsies with them, with Atlanta and the Cowboys, the Saints, right? Teams that are got nothing to play for, with the exception of the Falcons. These teams got nothing to play for, and yet here we are. We're needing, we touted that stat last week of Jayden Daniels, I think, first quarterback with, 5 touchdown passes under 30 seconds. Well, how about we don't put ourselves in a situation to be like this? It goes to show you that he can get it done, but that's not how you want to live in the NFL. And once again, a third-string quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys without their starting receiver, and we still needed all 60 seconds of football to win a game.
60 minutes, not 60 seconds.
I'm sorry, 60 minutes to win a game. And if you look at the last 4 games, starting with New Orleans, I think it was New Orleans, Philadelphia, Atlanta in overtime, and then the day at Dallas, all of those games came down to needing heroics. You can't live like that, and to your point, in the playoffs. And it goes back to something I said a few weeks ago, is I have to look at it from, as the fan in me, this is very concerning. I don't care how you shake it. And there's no one that can convince me that what we've seen with no running game, you having to put the game on Jayden Daniels' shoulder, in this case his legs, and ask him to go out and create magic because he's got no help from the receivers dropping balls and no running game, offensive line missing blocks and all that kind of stuff. There's concern here. The flip side of this thing is this is the first year he's a rookie, front office and everything, and they win 12 games with a last place schedule. And at this point, it's house money because we've exceeded all expectations and no one expected us to be here. And that's the quandary we have here, is that we're trying to celebrate the unexpected success. But the other side of this thing is you're not going to do jack in the playoffs if you continue to have penalties or you're a one-dimensional team. You can't beat terrible teams. I mean, we're 12-5 because they pulled out some of these games. But again, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Dallas, and you almost lost to the Cowboys twice with backup quarterbacks.
I will throw one thing here. It's not always, and this is, I will say this is not a fair comparison, but it's a comparison. There have been years, and some this year also, that Kansas City seems to do the same thing.
Well, it's certainly happening.
And I know Kansas City has more talent across the board. They have more talent, but Kansas City seems to have a a knack for, last minute heroics over and over and over again. And I'm not trying to say Washington is there, but when you have a guy that is like Mahomes, like potentially Jaden Daniels, you're never out of it.
Ken, let me stop you. You're right, especially this year for Kansas City. But I'm going to tell you the difference between the Kansas Cities of the world and what we're doing. They tend to do those things in the big moments, in the bigger games. We're having to do this against teams that we're supposed to be better than.
Sure.
I guarantee you Mahomes ain't having to go down at the last seconds of the game and throw a game-winning touchdown against a 3-win team. He would be doing that against Baltimore, the Pittsburghs, the Buffalo Bills. We're having to do this against teams that we're supposed to be better than. And yes, at the end of the day, it's still a last-minute touchdown, but the difference is the opponent.
So I would say, I would interject there and say, if it wasn't for Jaden Daniels, we would be losing all those games and we would be a 8 or 9 win team, right?
We may not be. And again, but my point being is, it is good that we're in this spot, but you can't live in the NFL week in and week out like this with Jaden Daniels having to do this. And so we want to celebrate the stat that he's doing this in the last 30 seconds of the game. But if we're supposed to be better than these teams, then you can't wait and come down to the last second of the game to be the third string quarterback whose season is over, who they got backups on the field. We're playing starters because we were trying to make sure we could secure the sixth seed.
Right.
And it's like we forgot to get off the bus. I mean, Jake Daniels was horrible today.
He did look bad. I will say this is one game where he borderline looked bad.
I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And again, there was no panic because we were in the playoffs. This wasn't a game we needed to get in the playoffs. So there was really no panic, but it was kind of like, what are we doing? Like, I was just like, okay. I mean, Terry was missing balls. We had some drop balls, or whether you can say Jayden was making bad throws to Terry that caused Terry to miss these balls. I mean, we couldn't move the ball. And then Marcus Mariota comes in and we start moving the ball.
Yeah.
What was different?
Mariota scored a touchdown on 3 of his 4 drives.
And what was different? You can't tell me Dallas started resting people on defense. No.
Yeah. I don't know what the approach was, but besides Mariota, I mean, I will say Jaden Daniels did not look as accurate
Rookie of the Year,
as accurate as he has earlier in the year, right? Terry had 2 balls that, if were thrown more accurate, he would have caught in the first half, and then 2 out of the 3 sacks, at least 2 out of the first 3 sacks that
Jayden,
the Cowboys had on Jaden Daniels, he should have gotten rid of the ball. The one where he stepped out, which was now that was 3rd down, and it didn't matter, we were going to punt, but you cannot make. He's not thinking, oh, it doesn't matter this time. It always matters, right? It always matters. And when it always matters, you just throw the ball. Just throw the ball at the receiver's feet as hard as you can so nobody can catch it, 3 yards ahead. Skip it into him. There's no need to take a 5-yard loss there. And then when there was an all-out blitz, the previous sack, the first sack was a legitimate sack. He tried to move up into the pocket. The pocket collapsed, and he got sacked. But the second sack was an all-out blitz. Something wasn't open. Receiver wasn't open, but he needed to get rid of the ball. Throw the ball away. Again, throw it in somebody's area, but ensure that nobody's going to catch it. Ground it towards somebody, and you avoid 2 sacks there.
Look, man, I mean, Jaden Daniels' play this year has exceeded all expectations by everybody, right? And even you look at all the talking heads. I think even it was one of our primetime games, and they were talking about Bo Nix being Rookie of the Year, and I think Troy even mentions don't forget about Jayden Daniels. And Joe Buck was like, almost as if he forgot Jayden Daniels was a rookie. And so he has raised the floor. And with that, the expectations are high and they have changed.
Right.
So we have to remind ourselves that hopefully these are some of the little things of playing the quarterback position that he will improve on in year 2, such as, hey, man, don't take the sack there. Don't take the 5-yard sack there. Just even though we're going to punt here, get rid of the ball.
Right.
Right. And I don't think he's not throwing the ball because he's worried about completion percentage. I don't think that's it at all. I
Right.
just think
Right.
he's
Right.
holding on to the ball. And at the last minute, it's like, well, to avoid the sack here, I'll just step out of bounds. But you still took the sack because you stepped out behind the line of scrimmage, Jayden.
Took a
Throw the
loss.
throw the ball, man. Throw the ball away. So I
Right.
think those are some things that he will grow and he will learn from. But this did not look like a team that I thought was going to come out and put their foot on the throat of the Cowboys and start resting players at halftime because the game is over and because we're going to secure the 6th seed.
Right.
It was everything but that. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. And then I listened to the post game press conference, and Dan Quinn alluded to the reason he pulled Jake Daniels in the second half was because there was some soreness in his leg, and it didn't hamper him necessarily that he couldn't play, but he said that for us to have won the game, it was going to require the legs of the quarterback, and Jayden had a little bit of soreness, and we can't help but think that that's from the against Atlanta where his leg got bent back. Dan Quinn didn't say that. That's just Reggie's speculation that there's probably a little bit of tenderness from that because that was an ugly looking leg bend, and we were all holding our breath that it wasn't serious, right? And but that was the reason for him pulling. And I'm sure it was easy to pull him because he wasn't looking good and he was getting beat up. The offensive line was not blocking. And so you put Marcus Mariota in there and let Jayden heal and not get more hurt, I guess.
Right.
But Marcus Mariota comes in and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? All of a sudden he's accurate. He's throwing balls, getting completions, making plays with his legs, his arms. And I'm like, I think we should start Marcus Mariota in the playoff game next week. No,
I know you're joking. Since we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and bring it up. I was going to potentially save it for the next podcast, but I'll throw something out and get your opinion on this. Okay. This is by far the most games that he has played. We see this in the end.
Jayden?
He being Jayden Daniels.
Okay.
Right. In college, you didn't play this many games. In college basketball, we see players that explode all season long, but you get to the NBA, and the back half of the NBA is tough on rookies. Baseball, it's a long season when you get to the majors. The back half, the rookies start off hot the first half of the season, and they get to the All-Star break, and they seem to cool off, right? They're not prepared, and it's hard to prepare somebody until you experience it for the full season that it takes. Do you think that could have anything to do with Jayden? Because he has been running more, and more has been asked from him because of our offensive struggles the last handful of weeks, and we're adding, this is already 3 or 4 more games more than what he plays in college, and that's not even counting all the preseason games. In college, you really don't have preseason games. Maybe a preseason kind of half-ass scrimmage, and I know he didn't play a ton in it, but again, it's a accumulation that maybe his legs aren't where they should be, or where it not used to be at this time of the season.
Look, it's possible, right? It's possible. I'm not going to say that it's not possible, but if it is, we got big problems, right? Because to me, something like fatigue due to the long season, I can see that as a lineman, offensive, defensive. I can see that if it was a wide receiver fighting against the DB, every play, every down, based on the number of snaps he's doing. Quarterback, come on, man.
But he's not a regular quarterback. Come on. I mean, it's look.
No, listen,
Look,
listen, man.
look,
Okay,
I'll go this.
let me give you one more point here.
Go ahead.
Finish my point. No, okay.
Okay.
I don't. And then if that's the case, then I'm looking here at the numbers. Bo Nix, he played today, played the whole game. Went 26 to 29 for 321 yards, 3 incompletion, 321 yards, 4 touchdowns. He played.
How much does he run?
I don't know.
In taking those hits, that's a bigger wear on your body than standing back there throwing. But
okay, but he's a runner. He's certainly a runner. He ran 7 for 49 today. I don't know what his season numbers are for running, for rushing, but he ran seven carries for 47 yards. He's a runner. He's just not as probably prolific as a runner as Lamar Jackson and Jake Daniels, but he's a new age quarterback. And I'm not promoting Bo Nix. I'm just doing it as a comparison because both of these guys have both played at least 4 years in college, and then they're both starting as a rookie. And Bo Nix has been gaining ground, and for some people feel like he should be Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't think he should be, but he's played well enough to where he's got some people who say that he should be. So if Jake Daniels is tired, then we got problems, man. But I don't think that that's the case. I don't know what the situation is. I do think that there's something to the fact that we haven't been able to beat the better teams. Seems like our offensive line is good, but I think they could be an Achilles heel when you start playing the upper echelon of teams and the better defenses. And I think it's showing up because all of a sudden our running game is gone. Jay's athletic ability is allowing him to escape the pocket and keep drives alive. But at the end of the day, he's getting a lot of pressure. He's been on a lot of pressure lately.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the problem is, but there's a problem. There's a problem brewing on this team. And we've all said it. We are who we are. There's nothing they're going to be able to do about it this season. I have no doubt they're going to address some needs next season. But yeah, man, there's these last few games have showed some glaring holes and opened up some major cans of concerns for this team going to playoff. Of the 3 teams that we could potentially face prior to this week, the Eagles, the Rams, and the Bucks, I think the best matchup we get is Tampa.
Right.
I was afraid going against Philly. I was afraid going against the Rams. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nakua, or whatever his name is, man, them dudes going to eat us up on the outside. I'm just hoping Baker can be Baker. And I don't want to get into our podcast for this playoff game, but I just felt like of the 3, Tampa was the game I wanted.
Yeah. I would tend to agree. I will say, the Bo Nix comparison. Bo Nix has 92 rushing attempts this year to Jaden Daniels 148. So it is more than 50% more that Jaden Daniels has had. But with that, today, kind of reflecting on some of our struggles in the first half and even some struggles in the second half, while we were scoring, sometimes it wasn't the prettiest. Rushing today. I don't know if you looked at the stats, but you know who the leading rusher is?
Let me guess. Marcus Mariota?
Yes. You know who's number 2?
I do not.
Jaden Daniels.
Oh God.
That's not a good mix.
No, because one thing that is shown about this team, when the run game was working,
yes,
Jaden looked phenomenal. When the running game wasn't there, Jaden was good enough against certain teams to will us to win. But if he's being contained in the pocket and the running game is non-existent, we struggle big time.
One of the things I mentioned during the game about B-Rob is when B-Rob is running the last half of the season. I don't know how many games, the last 4, 5, 6 games. The first half of the season, he would hit the line, and even if there was nothing there, he would move the line a yard and a half, 2 yards. He would get hit and he would move. He gets hit and he stops. He
Now
is
that
not hardly picking up many yards after contact.
the
And
run
he was
game,
doing that in the first half of the season. He was doing very well on that. He would hit and he would drag somebody 2 or 3 yards, 5 yards, sometimes. And he is not getting hardly any yards after contact.
well, the run game has been an issue. It has shown up for the past second half of the season, like you said. But he's one that I would say wear and tear and fatigue on the body could be a factor
Could be. Yep.
for sure.
Yep. And,
But
and that's why I don't know if you saw there was some people asking if somebody like Chris Rodriguez, definitely fresh. I don't know that all out and out talent is as high as B Rob, but because he's fresh, the way he's running in the time that he's played, should he be getting some more playing time and carries? I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I have to rely on the coaches on that, but he's been a spark when he comes in, and I'm not trying to cause controversy, but I'm noticing it with B Rob that again, he used to push the pile. He used to push people, hit them, and he would take them for a ride for a couple yards consistently, and that's not happening.
yeah, listen, I don't know the answer. I can just say collectively, as a group, the run game has been almost non-existent. Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, and those guys have come in and done good in some spot duty, primarily when Austin Eckler's missed time, and I think the one time Brian Robinson tweaked an ankle or whatever it was. So they've come in and done a good job in spot duty, but collectively as a unit, the running backs has left a lot to be desired, man. And I think the numbers that they do have been padded by the run success of Jaden Daniels. But before we get out of here, I don't want to miss the chance to highlight the fact that Terry's game-winning walk-off touchdown catch put him in the record books for the franchise. He surpassed at 13 reception touchdowns. He surpassed Ricky Sanders, who previously held that record at 12 reception touchdown catches, and he did that back in 1988.
Wow.
And I will tell you, man, 12 receptions isn't a lot. I'm just going to put that out there. I mean, I know 12 TDs, 12 reception touchdowns. That's not a lot, bro. That's less than one a game. And that record has stood since 1988. We've not had any good receivers here to surpass 12 touchdowns. And we all know why, right? There's no need to get into all of the bad drafts, the bad receivers we brought in, the lack of quarterback play. We get it. But the fact that a 12 touchdown year by a wide receiver has stood since 1988, although we're celebrating it, and kudos to Terry.
Right.
Bro, that is a terrible stat. But right now, Terry is in the record books as the reception leader at 13 in the history of this organization. And so congratulations to Terry. And he did it in a remarkable way by mossing Bland, and it sealed the game. It's not a Hail Mary, but it's damn near. I mean, it was a game winner. We was losing. If it wasn't for him making the catch, we lose the game. So if I'm Terry, I'm pretty sure he's keeping that ball, right? It's a record-breaking ball.
Well, I will say you're saying that 13 isn't very much. In this pass-happy NFL that we're in, and everything is geared for the receivers, right? And I mean, I'm trying to go off task because this is making me think about 3 or 4 different things. But with that being said, with 13 TDs, he's number 2 in the NFL this year, right? Sitting alone at number 2. The only person that has more TDs is Jamar Chase.
How many does he have?
So
almost 20.
17. So he's got,
And
but
he's playing with a guy on the other side. Come on, Ken.
No, I understand.
You got T. Higgins on the other side.
I understand that. So does that make it easier for him or harder for him?
The fact that he's able to get 17 with playing with a T. Higgins, by the way, the guy that seemed like every Commander fan wants to pull up a Brinks truck to pay to come to DC on the other side, and he still managed, because in fact I think he won the Triple Crown, right?
So you know what that means? That means other teams, they know to try and take out Terry, and he's still number 2 in the NFL because there is no second wide receiver.
I think you're missing my point. I think the achievement to Terry is good, but the fact that a record since 1988 at 12 has stood, how many years is that? We're talking 12. Can we play 17?
I don't have enough fingers, but you're talking 30 years almost.
And we're talking 17 weeks. That's a touchdown a game.
Look, we've had some bad seasons.
And that's what I said. And that's exactly what I said.
We had an era in between Ricky Sanders and today with Terry. We had a Snyder era.
Okay, but again, that's what I said. We don't need to get into it. I think as a fan, we all know why. But when you put it in perspective, we understand why the record has stood, but it's more than a testament to just how bad we've been. Since 1988, we've not had somebody come in here and get 10, 12, 13 touchdown catches as a wide receiver. That's just how bad the organization has been.
Well, I will put this also into perspective. Jamar Chase has 17 TDs, like I said. He has 175 targets for this year, right? 17, 175.
Ken, I'm not asking you to justify Terry's numbers. I get his numbers.
But
I'm not knocking him as a player.
That is off of 117 targets versus 175. And everybody knows it's going to Terry.
What am I missing?
Every single day. You don't have Higgins that is keeping safeties honest with Jamar Chase. If anything, that speaks.
I will say this again, Ken. I'm not comparing Terry to other receivers. I'm talking about our franchise. The fact that this record has stood for decades is a travesty. I'm not saying that Terry's numbers you could put up against Jamar Chase and say that his achievement was greater because of being double team and the fact that he's got less targets, he's not being thrown to as much, and all. I get that. The point I'm making is 13, which is, by the way, is not a great number. It took just 13 to be in the franchise record books for a record that has stood since 1988. That's how poor the wide receiver room has been in Washington since 1988. You know what we were in 1988? Don't tell me, because I don't want to know, because I don't want to put it out there. But that goes to show just how bad our organization has been.
I think you're underselling 13 TDs, to be honest. I just did a lookup while you were talking. In the last 4 years, I'm going to add another year here real quick to make it the last 5 years. And where did I lose my word? Oh, there it is. Let me go back. Let's make it 5 years. In 5 years, I'm sorry, that's not even right. I'm going to go back. The last 4 years, only 4 wide receivers have been over 13. That's it. You're averaging 1 a year. And so I think you have this idea that 17, 18, 20 receiving touchdowns, there's 4 or 5 or 6 people that do that every year. It's not. So if you're only talking 1 or 2 receivers every year who have over 13, those are good.
We don't have the time. We don't have the time to go and look at each one of those situations uniquely. But I will say again, 1988. That's the number you need to know. 1988.
That is a long time, but I think you're underselling 13 TDs. I think you think that bar is not that high. That bar for 13 in the NFL is a high number.
Okay. I disagree, but okay. We don't want to bore the listeners.
I'm just telling you the stats.
We don't want to bore the listeners with it, but I still think that since 1988, no, I'm not underselling 13.
I guarantee you, there's a team since 1988 who, without going over the stats, who hasn't had 13, because 13 is a big number.
And I'll show you a team that's probably been terrible. I'll show you a team.
Yeah. Look at the name on your hat. All right, look at the name on my hat. That's a terrible team.
So you just proved my point. That's the point I'm making. That show you how poor.
I think even besides that, I think there's going to be some playoff teams that just don't have. There's people going. I did during that same time was when Art Monk was there. Why doesn't Art Monk hold it? Art Monk goes to the Hall of Fame, and he might not have had 13 in one season.
It was also a different time, right? That was back when they ran the ball, Ken. The NFL wasn't a passing league. You look how far you're going back. You're talking Art Monk. There's people listening to this who don't even know who the hell Art Monk is. But back then, the league was a run first. You run the ball. That's why a lot of like Joe Theismann and some of these quarterbacks didn't have the big numbers that they have in today's NFL. But it's in today's NFL and the passing league, and I will show you the teams you're talking about with a lot of success. I guarantee you they had multiple weapons. That's why you didn't get probably a ton of touchdowns, because they probably had a good running back, probably a good tight end, and probably had multiple wide receivers. We've not had any of those things consistently, and yet we've not got guys to be able to do that. But again,
you just made my point. With all the offense and all the passing that's going on, there's only one person in the NFL.
Because you're comparing Terry to the other receivers. I'm comparing Terry to everybody that's been in our organization since 1988. There's a difference here. I'm not talking about comparing him to the other receiver. I'm talking about Washington. We've not had anybody. If you're listening
to this on YouTube, please make a comment on this, on where you see this. I think Reggie is underselling 13 touchdowns. When we come back for the next podcast, I'm going to have some stats for you for wide receiver touchdowns. I will take it upon myself.
Why do you need to tell me about wide receivers of other teams? I don't care. I'm talking about Washington Redskins football team Commanders. The fact of the matter is, since 1988, this record has stood this long. If you want to show me a stat, show me the team who's had a record that has stood like this long, where all the other teams have.
See what I can do, Reg.
They've not had a wide receiver who's gotten 12, 13 or more since whatever the number of years, 1988 to 2024. Show me another team where they've had that. That's the stat you want to compare, not Terry's 13 to Jamar Chase's 17.
I'm not comparing it. I'm just my benchmark is that 13 is an incredible number. And you're underselling it.
I didn't say it's not. What I'm saying is it's taking us 30 years to get it again. Come on, Ken. Anyway, let's
it's about that same time that nobody's broken Timmy Smith's rushing record for a Super Bowl, and there's been 30 Super Bowls, but nobody seems to be able to beat that. I mean, I don't know that's my stat was just a ridiculous stat. And I think that what you're saying there is an observation.
Okay. So we can agree to disagree.
We will on that one. I agree with that statement.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But one more thing real quick. The refs, and I'm not one who likes to come on here and complain about the refs. We all give St. Juice a hard time for some bad coverage or some pass interference. He was called for 2 pass interferences today. Both of them were bad calls. The NFL, I know, as we just talked, it is a pass happy league. They put things in place for more offense and to keep going. But what is pass interference for a wide receiver and the pass interference for a cornerback should be the exact same. I mean, they are in the rule book. Both of those calls on him today were bad calls. And if you're going to allow receivers to push off, and when you make your cut, they're allowed to shove off as you make your cut and do these kinds of things. You got to allow just minimal hand checking, right? If both of them are doing hand checking, you can't just call it on one. And it's just bad. Also on the Mariota scrambled and it was 4th and 1 before he took off for the big run. That was a bad mark. That was under 2 minutes. They should have stopped it and did it. That was a first down. They showed a couple. I know you were at the game, so you didn't see the replays. They showed the replay a couple times. He clearly made the first down, and they shorted him by probably almost a full yard on that.
Well, the coaching staff and the people in the booth should have said something to Dan about that.
Well, it's under 2 minutes, so you can't challenge under 2 minutes.
Yeah, but you can get not that you need to challenge, but you can get the officials' attention and be like, hey, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
But in terms of the PI situation, I don't disagree that. I mean, we saw when we played Philly how AJ Brown was holding and the shoulder pass and doing all these things against Marshawn Lattimore, and yet you grab his arm and then it was PI, but it wasn't offensive PI when he grabbed the pass, right? There's no consistency, and the problem with that is going to always be the fact that from official to official, they're not even consistent. Right. One official will look at that play and just say, hey man, they're just fighting for the ball, and another official will call it PI. And unfortunately, I think it's going to always be that way. And then it doesn't help, probably, because just like teams and players do studies to see who's officiating the game because of the way they tend to like to call certain games.
Right.
I think the officials know the same thing about players. And unfortunately, St. Jude's has gotten a reputation, man, that he's handsy, he's grabby. Right. And I think he does not and probably will forever not get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to defending the receivers, unless he just flat out knocks the ball down, intercepts the ball. But man, that kid just seems to always get called for petty pass interference calls, and it's unfortunate.
Right.
It's very unfortunate. I think officials scout teams just as teams will scout the officiating crew to see just how they like to call. Do they call everything picky? Do they call ticky-tack? Or do they let guys play? Oh, you can get away with this. These guys, whatever the case may be. And I think it goes both ways, and unfortunately, I think St. Jude's has a reputation, man.
Yeah. I mean, that could come, it could be a very good point there as far as his reputation, unfortunately. Again, if it's a pass interference, I don't like it, but it is a call. And you and I are both pretty much, we argue at first when we see the call sometimes, and then we see the replay and we're like, okay, yeah, that was pass interference, or that was holding, or that was whatever the play was. And again,
I'll give you a case in point. I don't know who the Cowboys tight end was, but late in the game where Bobby Wagner was covering the play. I remember that. And they initially called him out of bounds. Then it was challenged. I don't know if the Cowboys challenged it or it was under 2 minutes and it was challenged. But either way, the Cowboys challenged it. They looked at it, they played it, and the call stood as incomplete. Everything I saw on the Jumbotron, I thought he got his toe down. And I even turned to the people, I said, I thought that was a touchdown. But they call it
he never had control of the ball. Even when he went to fall, and when he actually fell out of bounds, the ball was out of his hands, and then he was pulling it back in, and then it kind of hit the ground. He never had control of the ball. In slow motion, it seems like he has it for a fraction of a second, but he never had it in bounds in control.
Okay, so that's the big difference. So on the TV broadcast, they looked at everything. In the stadium, Dave was focusing on his feet. So it made everybody feel like he caught it. It was whether or not he got both feet in bounds. And that's why it became a looks like he got both feet down. Whereas on the broadcast, it's not that it was the feet not being down, it's just that he didn't have control of the ball.
Yeah, and then I didn't see the angle, but you know how they bring in the announcer ref?
Yeah.
I forget the Dan.
They have a couple.
Yeah, but anyway, he came in and he said that he thought from the angle that he saw that the first foot touched as the second foot was touching, or that the first touch at that point was out of bounds when the second foot touched. So at that point, he's just out of bounds.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we don't,
anyway.
Being live, you don't have the benefit of the commentary. So they just kept showing back and forth, what I call doing the old John Madden back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Right.
And everyone's looking on the Jumbotron. Of course, the Cowboy fans were like cheering because, hey, look, he's in, and then they came in, they said, call stands, incomplete. And I was like, well, I'll take it. Because again, I think that was after the bad PI call in the end zone. Same end zone, in fact. It was a bad person, what should have been a field goal, and I think that kept the drive going because they called PI and they got the ball at the 1 yard line. So, but anyway, well, man, that is all I got. We got to win. Regular season is over. Now we're on to the big dance. At this point, there are no second chances, so you either win or go home. And we will be back, and we will have a preview for our first ever wild card podcast. And we will be bringing you for
the Knucklehead podcast.
Yeah, we've never had a playoff podcast, so this will be good, man. It'll be fun, and we will preview our matchup as we head down to South Florida, to Tampa, and should be fun. Looking forward to it, man. So unless you got anything else, man.
No, I will say for real quick about Tampa, the Tampa and Florida area has a good Washington Redskins / Commanders amount of people there. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be overwhelming Buccaneers, but I think you're going to be surprised potentially on how many Commanders fans there are in the stadium.
I hope they show up
for that one. So
I hope they show up.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
I would love to go, but last minute flights and tickets, airline flights and ticket sales, it's out of my budget.
Yeah, if anybody wanted to sponsor, the Knuckleheads podcast, in the next 24 to 48 hours would be a fantastic time to become a sponsor of this show.
Give us a shout.
Yeah, hit us up. We'll do some real fast negotiations so we can get there and give you a report directly from Tampa Bay,
Raymond James Stadium. So, all right, y'all. So if you got nothing else, man. Peace out.
Peace out, Knuckleheads.